Have you ever woken in the quiet dark, heart pounding, carrying the certainty that something is coming, even though nothing in the world has yet changed? Have you ever stood among people laughing and talking, only to feel as though you're peering at them through glass, as if you exist behind a veil no one else can see? Or perhaps you felt a sudden flash of knowing, an image, a premonition, a symbol, that blooms inside your chest like fire and leaves you breathless. But when you try to speak of it, your words fall to ash and the world looks at you as though you're mad. What if I told you that you're not mad, but that your gift might be carrying you toward a hidden abyss? Carl Gustav Jung called it one of the most mysterious and perilous psychological paths a human being can walk. A type of perception so rare and so powerful that it can border on prophecy or on delusion. And he left us a warning, a dark warning. Because for some of us, the images that rise from the depths are not just ideas, they are living forces. And if we do not find a way to ground them, express them, give them shape in the world, they can consume us from the inside out. This video is for those who live at the threshold between worlds, for those whose inner visions glow like stars unseen by any telescope, for those whose greatest gift is also their greatest vulnerability. I want you to listen closely, because Carl Jung's dark warning might be for you. You see, among the many intricate psychological types that Carl Jung mapped, there is one that stands apart like a shadowed figure at the edge of the forest. Rare, elusive, infinitely complex. Jung called it the introverted intuitive type. This is the individual whose psychic antenna is forever tuned inward, sweeping the depths of the unconscious instead of the surface of external reality. Their gaze is not upon facts or appearances, but on possibilities still unborn, on the shimmering silhouettes of things yet to come. They do not live primarily through the senses, nor do they trust only what they can touch, measure, or analyze. Instead, they drift beneath the surface of waking life, their minds steeped in visions, archetypes, and symbolic images whose meaning often defies language. Jung himself confessed that the introverted intuitive is among the most difficult types to understand, not only for others, but for themselves. They are people who appear distant, detached, as though standing behind a translucent curtain. Their words may be sparse or enigmatic because the images rising in them are so dense with meaning they can hardly be spoken aloud. And society, which worships clarity, evidence, and measurable results, often has no patience for this kind of perception. So the introverted intuitive learns, early and painfully, that their truths rarely find a place in ordinary conversation. They begin to retreat inward, guarding their visions like sacred flames against the cold wind of misunderstanding. But behind that quiet exterior lies a vast inner kingdom, a place where symbols whisper secrets, where the future sometimes reveals itself in flashes, where the psyche carries on ancient conversations in a language older than words. And it is in this inner territory that Jung's dark warning begins to stir. Because to live as an introverted intuitive is to exist in a different dimension of reality, a world woven not of facts, but of meanings still unborn. Imagine standing at the edge of an ocean at night. The waves roll in, black and glistening, and sometimes in the rhythm of their crashing, you hear a voice, a prophecy, an image, an intuition so strong that it feels like destiny itself reaching out to touch you. That is how introverted intuition operates. It does not simply think about things. It perceives the invisible architecture behind reality. It senses patterns forming long before they crystallize into events. It tastes the subtle winds of change before the storm clouds appear on any horizon. An introverted intuitive walks through the world half here, half elsewhere. You might be sitting in a meeting, but your mind is tracing the arc of a future possibility, flickering like a candle just beyond the present moment. You see connections between people, ideas, symbols, threads of meaning no one else seems to notice. And these insights come suddenly, like lightning strikes in the dark. A phrase overheard might explode into a revelation about an entire life path. A glimpse of someone's eyes might reveal a story they haven't even told themselves. But here's the catch. This knowing rarely arrives with proof. You cannot always explain why you know what you know. The visions appear as images, sensations, pulses of certainty. They do not announce themselves with logic, and because you cannot defend these visions with facts, the world often dismisses them as fantasy, delusion, or simply weird. And so you stay silent. You keep your visions tucked away, locked behind the quiet mask you wear. Yet inside, the visions keep pulsing. Sometimes it's an image that repeats over and over, a serpent, a doorway, a figure robed in light. Sometimes it's a bodily sensation, a tightening in your chest, an electric buzz in your spine, as though something urgent and invisible is trying to break through. It can feel like both a gift and a burden, because while others live comfortably in the daylight world, you are forever listening for signals in the dark. You're haunted by a sense that life is not as simple as it seems, that underneath the ordinary is a secret script, and only you can read it. And you wonder, is this my superpower, or is it my curse? You live in perpetual tension between the visible and the invisible, between what the world demands of you and what the symbols demand, between the solid ground of reality and the strange, luminous images flickering in the depths of your mind. And that's why Jung's warning is so crucial, because for the introverted intuitive, the border between revelation and madness is perilously thin. And if you are one of them, you deserve to know how to walk that line without falling. But here's the terrible beauty of it. To carry this kind of sight is to feel both chosen and exiled. Because what happens when the world you live in cannot or will not see what you see? A chasm opens. A silent abyss stretches between your inner vision and the ordinary conversations echoing around you. You begin to drift from the familiar warmth of human connection. Even among friends, you feel like a lone traveler who has returned from a distant country and finds that no one speaks your language anymore. You laugh at the right moments. You nod, you perform the rituals of belonging. But inside, you're somewhere else entirely. You know this feeling if you've ever swallowed your words because you knew they would sound insane. If you've ever hesitated to share a dream, a symbol, a sudden knowing, because you could already see the polite smiles or the puzzled glances waiting on the other side. So you grow quiet, and in the hush of your silence, your inner world grows louder. The visions become more vivid, more insistent. Sometimes they arrive at night, twisting through your dreams in symbols you don't fully understand. Other times they seize you in waking life, a sudden, inexplicable certainty that someone you love is about to make a life-altering choice, or that the shape of your future has shifted, though nothing tangible has yet changed. But with every moment that you hide this inner world, the abyss grows deeper. And there's another cruel irony. The more profound your insight, the more alienating it often becomes. For what you perceive are not simply personal thoughts, but forces, patterns, and archetypes moving beneath the surface of collective life. You're tuned to a frequency most people never even know exists. You may glimpse the shadows of coming cultural changes, sense hidden motives in the people around you, or feel premonitions of events still months or years away. Yet when you speak, your words fall like stones into water, sinking without a trace. This is the agony of the introverted intuitive, to be gifted with sight, but invisible yourself. To stand on the threshold of revelation, but live surrounded by misunderstanding. And it is in precisely this loneliness that Jung's dark warning takes root, because the soul can only bear so much isolation before it begins to turn on itself. Carl Jung, in his wisdom and his relentless honesty, did not romanticize the fate of the introverted intuitive. He knew what few dare to admit, that the same gift that grants glimpses of hidden truth can also open the door to the very edge of madness. Here is Jung's dark warning, spoken across a century of time. When the visions that rise from the depths remain unspoken, unexpressed, or unintegrated into conscious life, they do not simply fade away. They gather strength in the darkness, they grow wild and untamed, and eventually they begin to seize control of the psyche itself. Jung called this phenomenon archetypal possession, a condition where the images of the unconscious become so dominant that the ego, the conscious self, is swept away in their current. The very symbols that once whispered truths become tyrants, imposing their narratives on your life, whether you will or no. You no longer have visions, you become the vision. Consider this. The unconscious is not simply a storehouse of forgotten memories, It is a living, dynamic realm populated by archetypes, universal patterns that have shaped human experience for thousands of years. The hero, the wise old man, the mother, the shadow. When these archetypes remain unconscious, they act upon us from behind the scenes. They color our perceptions, drive our choices, shape our relationships. But when they rise into consciousness in raw, undigested form, they can overwhelm us entirely. The introverted intuitive is particularly vulnerable to this danger. Because their natural mode of perception is symbolic, they are prone to identifying with the images that arise within them. A sudden vision of themselves as a prophet can seduce them into believing they are destined to save the world. A powerful dream of death might convince them they are doomed. And so they begin to live inside the symbols instead of interpreting them. This is what Jung meant when he warned that introverted intuition, unbalanced, can become a pathway to dissociation. The images take on a life of their own, and the boundary between inner and outer dissolves. Reality becomes fluid, judgment becomes clouded. The person who once saw patterns others missed is now caught in a psychic hurricane, spinning further and further away from the ground of lived life. Jung observed this firsthand in his patients and in himself. He knew that the deeper you venture into the psyche, the more essential it becomes to keep your feet planted in the real. Because visions are not reality, symbols are not life itself. Unless you learn to hold the tension between inner images and outer facts, the very forces that could guide you to your destiny can instead pull you into psychic fragmentation. And so Jung's warning remains stark and unflinching. The gift of profound intuition carries a hidden cost. And for those who do not find a way to translate their visions into conscious life, the darkness is waiting. Jung was not content with theories. He illustrated his insights with stories pulled from the deepest corridors of human experience. Stories that reveal the raw power and the peril of the symbolic life. One of his most haunting cases was a woman who came to him gripped by an image that would not let her go. She spoke of a black snake coiling in her abdomen, cold and alive. As the months passed, she dreamt that this snake began to climb upward through her body, until it emerged from her mouth and transformed into a golden-headed serpent, radiant and still. To the casual observer, this might have seemed psychosis, a hallucination without meaning. But Jung saw in it the unfolding drama of individuation, the alchemical transformation of darkness into light. The black snake, for Jung, was the symbol of repressed, unconscious material, shadow content slithering in the depths of her psyche. Its emergence and metamorphosis into gold signaled the potential for profound healing and integration, the rebirth of a new consciousness forged from the union of light and dark. This, he said, is how the psyche speaks, in images more ancient than words. But symbols are double-edged. Consider Franz Kafka. An introverted intuitive, if ever there was one, Kafka lived haunted by visions of labyrinthine bureaucracy, faceless authority, and an oppressive sense of existential guilt. His writings are masterpieces of symbolic expression, but his private journals reveal a man tormented, drifting between clarity and despair, unable to fully integrate his inner visions into a balanced life. Or Vincent van Gogh, whose paintings explode with symbolic color and form, each brushstroke vibrating with psychic energy. His art is a window into the blazing inner world of intuition, but his inability to root himself in reality led him to psychosis, despair, and an early death. These figures remind us that symbolic images can either illuminate the world or devour the one who beholds them. For the introverted intuitive, the question is always this: will you become the artist who channels your visions into works that touch the collective soul? Or will you be swept away by the images, lost in a private mythology that no one else can enter? Jung's examples shine like beacons and warnings. They show us that the visions rising from the depths are not fantasies to be dismissed, nor absolute truths to be obeyed without question. They are invitations, thresholds, doors, and whether you step through those doors in wisdom or become trapped behind them depends on a crucial skill: knowing how to separate true intuition from the seductive whispers of delusion. Because here lies the razor's edge for the introverted intuitive. How do you know if what you're sensing is genuine insight, or the beginnings of fantasy that threatens to consume your life? It's a question as old as mysticism itself. The prophets, the poets, the visionaries, all have wrestled with this boundary, trembling in the knowledge that the same gift which can reveal divine truths can also plunge them into madness. Jung taught that true intuition arises from what he called the self, the deepest center of the psyche, the totality of who we are and could become. When intuition comes from this place, it carries a particular feeling, calm certainty, quiet authority, and a sense of meaningful connection to something larger than the ego. But false intuitions, the ones that lead us astray, often come wrapped in emotional extremes. They arrive with grandiosity, urgency, or terror. They demand obedience. They whisper, "You are special. You alone see the truth. The world must listen to you." This is the seed of archetypal inflation, the moment when a human being mistakes a symbolic image for literal identity. Instead of seeing themselves as a person who has visions, they become convinced they are the chosen visionary, the savior, the martyr, and that's when reality begins to slip. Jung warned that introverted intuition, left unchecked, can morph into psychic possession. The symbols seize control. The person becomes isolated, suspicious, interpreting every coincidence as cosmic confirmation of their private prophecy. Relationships crumble, as friends and family cannot follow the logic of visions that have become absolute truth. So how do you tell the difference? The answer, paradoxically, is humility. True intuition speaks softly. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't demand that you abandon your life, your relationships, or your body. Instead, it offers possibilities. It nudges, it suggests, and it remains open to correction. Jung said we must always subject our inner visions to conscious reflection. We must test them against reality, seek feedback, and remain willing to be wrong. A vision that cannot tolerate doubt is not wisdom, it is tyranny. So if you find yourself possessed by an idea, certain that you alone carry a cosmic truth, pause. Ask, does this insight connect me more deeply to life, to compassion, to the reality of others? Or does it isolate me, inflate me, and sever my ties to the ordinary world? Because the purpose of intuition is not to elevate us above humanity, it's to help us serve it more wisely. The greatest danger is not having visions. The greatest danger is believing they exempt you from being human, and that is the true heart of Jung's warning. So if the danger is being consumed by inner images, what then is the way out? Jung's answer was deceptively simple and utterly profound. Expression. Symbols demand incarnation. Visions crave form. If you are an introverted intuitive, your task, the task upon which your psychic health depends, is to translate the invisible into the visible, to give shape to the forces that rise within you, to carve the dream into stone, paint it onto canvas, pour it into music, weave it into words. Because when a symbol remains trapped inside, it behaves like a caged animal. It paces, claws, snarls, and eventually breaks through in ways you cannot control. But when you express it, you give it a home. You bring it into the realm of shared reality, where it can be seen, heard, touched, and integrated. Consider Jung himself. He confessed that during a time of personal crisis, he felt overwhelmed by visions of gods, monsters, and archetypal figures. But instead of fleeing these images, or believing he was them, he sat down and began to draw, to write, to paint. He created what became known as the Red Book, an extraordinary manuscript filled with brilliant paintings and cryptic texts chronicling his inner journey. Through this act of creation, Jung saved himself. He transformed potential madness into meaning. Or look at Kafka, whose labyrinthine writings, though tinged with despair, gave language to the alienation of modern existence. His inner visions, poured into fiction, became a mirror for all humanity. This is why creative expression is not the luxury for the introverted intuitive. It is a psychological necessity. Your art does not have to be good by the world's standards. You do not have to be Van Gogh, or Jung, or Kafka. You simply have to make. Write down your dreams. Sketch the image that won't leave your mind. Sing the song that echoes in your chest. Perform a ritual that honors the symbols visiting you in the night. Because when you give form to your visions, something miraculous happens. They stop haunting you. They become your allies instead of your captors. And what was once an unbearable burden transforms into a bridge connecting your private inner world to the collective soul of humanity. This is how the introverted intuitive turns potential madness into genius, isolation into communion, chaos into creation. Jung knew that the symbol is not merely a sign, it is a seed, and if you plant it in the fertile soil of expression, it can grow into something that feeds both your soul and the world. Yet even expression is not enough, because the introverted intuitive, by nature, lives so much in the air of ideas, in the mist of symbols, that they risk losing touch with the simple gravity of life itself. Jung insisted that for the intuitive type, salvation lies not only in expression, but in grounding, in anchoring the psyche to the solid earth through what he called the sensation function. Sensation is the part of you that lives in the here and now. It knows the warmth of sunlight on your face, the crisp tang of cold water, the weight of a smooth stone resting in your palm. It does not speak in visions, it speaks through the body. And for the introverted intuitive, this is often the function most neglected and the most urgently needed. Because when your mind is forever scanning unseen horizons, you forget that you have feet, that you are flesh and blood, that your soul is housed in a living body bound to this earth. Without sensation, your visions remain untethered. They spin off into endless abstraction, losing all connection to lived experience, and in that disconnection, the danger of inflation, delusion, and psychic collapse grows exponentially. Jung's prescription was deeply practical. He urged intuitives to cultivate simple, physical rituals, daily practices that anchor them to reality. Take walks in nature, feel the dirt beneath your shoes, garden, chop vegetables, clean your living space, work with clay or wood or fabric, pay attention to textures, colors, and smells. Engage your senses fully, and let the body remind you that you exist not only in dreams, but also in time and space. Even mundane routines can serve as lifelines. Waking at the same hour, making your bed, brewing your coffee slowly, savoring the aroma, lighting a candle before you write. These small acts form an axis around which your inner world can safely revolve. Because grounding is not the enemy of vision, it is the soil in which vision takes root. When you marry intuition to sensation, your insights gain substance. Your symbolic perceptions become guides rather than ghosts. You remain capable of touching mystery, yet also of living fully in the present moment. This is psychic maturity, to walk between worlds, one foot planted firmly in the earth, the other stepping into the infinite. Jung knew that only in this balance can the introverted intuitive fulfill their extraordinary potential without falling prey to the darkness lurking behind their gift. So listen to your symbols, but also listen to your heartbeat, to the hush of wind through leaves, to the weight of the cup in your hand. Because the body is not separate from spirit. It is the vessel through which spirit enters the world. And it is in the tangible, everyday acts of living that your visions find their true purpose. Not to separate you from life, but to deepen your connection to it. Even when you learn to express your visions, even when you ground yourself in sensation and ritual, one final challenge remains for the introverted intuitive, and it is perhaps the most painful of all. How do you carry your inner truth in a world that seems designed to dismiss it? Modern society worships the measurable, the profitable, the visible. We live in a culture obsessed with data, speed, and superficial clarity. Social media demands constant performance. Employers demand productivity metrics. Conversations revolve around what can be seen, bought, or proven. And where, in this bright glare of the factual, is there space for the quiet voice of intuition? For visions that cannot be monetized? For truths that arrive not as facts, but as symbols pulsing in the dark? Many introverted intuitives find themselves living double lives. By day, they comply with the ordinary world's demands. They smile, produce, perform. But in the secret hours, they return to their visions, scribbling notes in journals, painting strange images, tracing invisible threads, connecting events no one else sees. And sometimes the weight of that split becomes unbearable. To deny your inner visions is to betray your soul. but to reveal them too openly risks ridicule, alienation, or worse, the suspicion that you're unstable. So you hover at the edges of conversations, wondering if it's safe to share what you see. You second-guess your words. You measure every sentence, fearful of being labeled too intense, too weird, or too much. And yet, Jung insisted that individuation, the journey toward becoming fully yourself, requires precisely this: to hold your symbolic truth intact, even when the world does not understand. It doesn't mean rejecting society entirely. It doesn't mean proclaiming yourself a prophet or withdrawing into isolation. It means learning to walk between worlds, to live with one foot in the visible, pragmatic world and the other in the luminous depths of your inner vision. To speak carefully, but not to silence yourself completely, because the world may be blind to what you see, but it desperately needs the gifts you carry. Your insights into meaning, into hidden patterns, into the soul of things. That is medicine for a culture starving for depth. And so, living symbolically, as Jung taught, becomes an act of quiet resistance, a way of declaring, I will not surrender my soul for comfort. I will not trade depth for superficial belonging. I will live my vision, even if no one else can see it. And perhaps, in doing so, you light a spark for someone else who has been wandering in the dark, wondering if they are alone. So if you've listened this far, let me speak to you directly from one who has walked this strange and luminous path. You are not alone. If you see symbols behind ordinary things, if you feel premonitions that others dismiss, if your visions blaze so brightly inside you that they sometimes frighten you, know this: you are not cursed, you are called. But heed Jung's warning: do not let your visions remain trapped within you. Do not mistake your symbols for reality itself. Do not allow your inner world to become a prison of silent images. Instead, create, speak, write, paint, sing, dance. Find rituals that honor the unseen. Let your body remind you that you live not only in spirit, but in flesh. And most importantly, stay humble. Let your intuition guide you, but never become its slave. Let doubt remain your companion, for it guards you from arrogance. Because the true purpose of your gift is not to elevate you above others. It is to serve life, to bridge worlds, to bring back wisdom from the depths so that others might find their way. This, Jung believed, is the path of individuation, the path of becoming fully and uniquely yourself. And in a world starved for meaning, your visions may be the very thing that saves not only your own soul, but ours. If this resonates with you, share your story in the comments. Let us build a community where the invisible can finally be spoken, where your visions are not dismissed, but honored. And if you want to continue exploring the mysteries of your inner world, subscribe to this channel, because together we can learn to live on the threshold between worlds, without falling into the abyss. Until next time, remember, the symbols are speaking. Listen wisely and live bravely.